A young rising star stepped onto the most prestigious grass court in tennis history and completely changed the atmosphere. Alex Eala wasn't just playing a match, she was rewriting expectations in real time. Every rally felt heavier, every point felt louder, and every shot carried pure intent. The crowd slowly shifted from silence to shock to disbelief. Because what they were witnessing wasn't ordinary, it was historic. Wimbledon is not just a tennis tournament. It is a symbol of legacy, discipline, pressure, and greatness. The moment a player steps onto its grass courts, they are no longer just competing against an opponent. They are competing against history itself. For Alex Eala, this was the moment she had been preparing for her entire young career. As she entered the court, everything felt different. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation, as if the stadium itself was holding its breath. The crowd was calm, observant, and ready to witness either a breakthrough or a breakdown. Across the net stood Renata Zarazua, experienced, steady, and fully aware that this match could become uncomfortable if she allowed the young challenger to gain confidence. But from the very first second, something unusual was visible in Alex Eala's presence. There was no hesitation in her steps, no signs of nervous energy, no visible fear of the occasion. Instead, she carried herself with a calm intensity, the kind usually seen in seasoned Grand Slam performers, not rising stars making their early statements. The warm-up rallies began. Gentle at first, almost like both players were testing the surface, adjusting to the grass, reading bounce, timing, and rhythm. Wimbledon grass is famously unpredictable, and even the slightest miscalculation can throw a player off balance. But Eala adapted quickly. Her movement was light, her positioning sharp, and her reaction time surprisingly fast. Every ball she returned seemed controlled rather than forced. It was clear she wasn't overwhelmed by the moment. She was absorbing it. As the match officially began, the energy shifted. Zarazua tried to establish control early, aiming for consistency, depth, and patience. She attempted to draw errors from the young opponent, hoping experience would eventually create gaps. But Eala refused to fall into that rhythm. Instead, she began constructing points with intelligence beyond her years. She wasn't just hitting the ball, she was building patterns. She mixed angles, varied pace, and started pushing Zarazua slightly out of position. The crowd noticed the shift slowly at first, then all at once. This wasn't a nervous debut anymore. This was a competitor taking command. Every point Eala won increased her confidence, and every confident step made her game sharper. Her forehand started to open the court more aggressively, while her backhand remained steady under pressure. What made it even more impressive was her ability to stay calm after winning important points. No overreaction, no emotional imbalance, just focus. By the time the early games unfolded, it was no longer about experience versus youth. It was about control versus resistance, and slowly, control was shifting sides. Every tennis match has a turning point, a moment where momentum silently begins to shift without the scoreboard fully showing it yet. In this match, that moment came sooner than anyone expected. At first, Zarazua appeared stable. She kept rallies long, avoided unnecessary risks, and tried to force Eala into mistakes. Her strategy was simple: wait for the young player to crack under pressure. But Eala did not crack. Instead, she adjusted. She began reading patterns faster, almost predicting where the ball would go before it was even struck. Her anticipation became her biggest weapon. She started stepping into returns earlier, cutting angles, and forcing Zarazua to hit from uncomfortable positions. The crowd began reacting more frequently now. Small murmurs turned into visible engagement. Every clean winner for Eala created a wave of surprise. What stood out most was her fearless shot selection. On important points where most young players would choose safety, Eala chose aggression. She went for down-the-line winners, deep cross-court pressure shots, and sudden changes of pace that disrupted her opponent's rhythm completely. Zarazua tried to respond by increasing depth and slowing down the pace of rallies. She attempted drop shots, slices, and directional changes, anything to break Eala's flow. But nothing worked for long. Because every time Zarazua tried to shift momentum, Eala responded immediately with precision. It wasn't just physical skill anymore, it was mental dominance beginning to form. The scoreboard started reflecting the pressure building on Zarazua. Her unforced errors increased slightly, not dramatically, but enough to indicate discomfort. That small margin was all Eala needed to expand her control. And she did exactly that. Her service games became stronger, more confident. First serve percentage improved. Second serves were no longer defensive, they became setups for attack. With every passing game, Eala's presence on court grew stronger. The crowd, initially neutral, started leaning emotionally toward the underdog story unfolding in front of them. There is something powerful about witnessing a young player fearlessly challenge experience on the biggest stage in tennis. And Wimbledon crowd energy is unique. Once it shifts, it amplifies everything. By the end of the opening phase, it was no longer a balanced contest. It was a momentum shift in progress, and Alex Eala was on the rise. As the match moved deeper, Alex Eala's game entered a completely different level. What began as confidence was now turning into full control. Every shot she played carried intention, precision, and a growing sense of authority over the court. Her footwork became even sharper, allowing her to reach balls earlier and recover faster. On grass, where balance is everything, she looked unusually stable for someone still building her Grand Slam experience. That stability became the foundation of her dominance. Zarazua tried to regroup, but the pressure was constant. Eala was not giving her space to breathe. Every time she tried to build a rally, Eala disrupted it with aggressive positioning and smart shot placement. The forehand became her main weapon. She started dictating rallies with it, opening angles and forcing Zarazua wide. Once the opponent was stretched, Eala would finish the point with calm precision. But what truly elevated her performance was her decision-making. She was no longer playing reactive tennis. She was dictating patterns, controlling tempo, and forcing errors rather than waiting for them. This is the difference between a young talent and a rising champion. The crowd began to feel it too. Every rally had tension, every point had meaning, and every winner from Eala felt like a statement. Zarazua attempted adjustments, changing serve placement, adding more slices, trying to slow the rhythm, but nothing disrupted Eala's flow for long. Even when points became extended, Eala stayed composed and patient. That patience turned into pressure for her opponent. As the set progressed, frustration began to show on Zarazua's side. Small errors, missed timing, and rushed decisions started creeping in, not because she lacked skill, but because Eala was not allowing comfort at any stage. And in tennis, discomfort spreads quickly. By the final stages of the set, the outcome felt inevitable. Eala's control was too strong, her mindset too stable, and her execution too clean. Wimbledon was witnessing something special. A young player not just competing but commanding the stage. Every match has a moment where belief becomes reality. For Alex Eala, that moment came with a crucial break that shifted everything permanently in her favor. The break wasn't just a point in the match. It was a psychological turning point. From that moment onward, the entire rhythm of the contest changed. Eala's confidence surged instantly. Her body language lifted, her shot selection became even more aggressive, and her focus sharpened further. She started playing like someone who already knew the outcome, but was still executing it point by point. Zarazua felt the shift immediately. Suddenly, every rally felt heavier. Every service game felt like survival, and every error added pressure that was becoming harder to control. Eala continued applying pressure relentlessly. She targeted weaknesses, exploited angles, and forced her opponent into defensive positions again and again. The consistency of her attack left no room for recovery. What stood out most was her mental discipline. Even with the lead, she never relaxed. No unnecessary risks, no emotional drop, just structured dominance. The crowd started reacting emotionally now. You could feel admiration growing with every passing game. It was no longer about who would win. It was about how convincingly Eala would finish. Zarazua attempted one final push, trying to break rhythm with aggressive shots, but Eala absorbed everything and responded with even greater control. And as the final games unfolded, the reality became unavoidable. A new player was emerging on the Wimbledon stage. When the final point ended, there was a brief moment of silence, the kind that happens when a crowd processes something unexpected. Then came realization. Alex Eala had not just won her first-round match, she had dominated it in a way that demanded attention from the entire tennis world. The scoreboard told the story, but the performance told something bigger. A new competitor had arrived, with confidence, intelligence, and fearlessness beyond expectation. As she stood on the court, there was a quiet maturity in her reaction. No exaggerated celebration, just awareness. Awareness that this was not the destination, it was the beginning. For Wimbledon, this match was another result. But for tennis fans, it was a signal. A signal that a rising star is building momentum, growing stronger, and ready to challenge bigger names on the biggest stages. Alex Eala walked off the court with something far more valuable than a win. She walked off with belief, recognition, and momentum. And Wimbledon had just witnessed the start of something new. If you enjoyed this latest tennis update and want to stay ahead of the biggest stories in the world, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to World Zone right now. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of the action. See you in the next video.